Greetings. Thank you for joining today's webinar, How LoadMaster Supports Your Security Strategy. My name is Rochelle Wheeler, and I am joined here today by Kurt Young and Maurice McMullin. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. There is a questions panel located on the upper right corner of your screen. You may need to expand the panel by either clicking the plus sign or the down arrow to see the full view. We will take questions at the end of this presentation, so you are encouraged to submit those questions via the questions panel at any time. Today's session will be recorded and the recording will be made available upon its conclusion, along with a copy of the EMA report, How to Succeed with Load Balancing in a Hybrid Multi-Cloud World. I will now hand today's presentation over to Kurt Young and Maurice McMullin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maurice McMullin, and I'm a product manager for LoadMaster. And I'm joined today by Kurt Young, one of our solution engineers. Kurt brings a wealth of knowledge on LoadMaster, and he'll be providing or supporting me with some deeper technical insights today as we go through the presentation. Our agenda is as outlined, a quick look at where to start on the security strategy, and then we'll jump into the security challenges with application delivery in a multi-cloud environment and look at how LoadMaster can address those challenges. So our first starting point really is what a security strategy looks like, and this will vary for our organization. A good starting point is the NIST.com website. So we've got there you can find the NIST security or cybersecurity framework, and it's a set of guidelines for creating a cybersecurity strategy, and established by the National Institute of Standards and Technology under the U.S. Department of Commerce. It helps businesses follow best practices to improve their cyber strength and stance. And if you're building out or reviewing your security strategy, then it's worthwhile to check out their guidelines. Again, that's on NIST.gov. Now, Progress have a number of products that support your security strategy, and you can see the different areas there: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We've got Flowmon, which is detect and respond is the primary focus there. We've got What's Up Gold, very much around identifying your assets on your network. And we've got Chef, which is cloud security posture management is one of the key features there of the Chef automation. But today we'll look at how the Progress Kemp LoadMaster can help implement your security strategy across on-premise and the hybrid multi-cloud environments, and specifically how it assists with the identify and protect aspects of a security strategy. And this webinar, it leans a lot on the findings of the research paper, How to Succeed with Load Balancing in a Hybrid Multi-Cloud World, which was commissioned by Progress and conducted in late 2022 by Enterprise Management Associates, also known as EMA. All attendees today will receive a copy of this paper. I believe it'll be sent as a link in a follow-up email, so you can dive deeper into the wider findings, and it includes in there a roadmap for looking at addressing your challenges around multi-cloud, hybrid cloud security. So today we're going to be looking at how LoadMaster fits into that there, and specifically that aspect of load balancing, treating your load balancing as part of your security architecture. So here we see, again, this is from the EMA report. Here we see the top security capabilities that organizations are using on their load balancers or ADCs. ADCs just application delivery controller, and a load balancer with added security features is often referred to as an ADC. So these are the main security related capabilities that are in use. Uh, and one there of interest is VPN concentrator. And now LoadMaster doesn't include a VPN concentrator in there. But Kurt, just to bring you in here to introduce you to everybody, there are some aspects of LoadMaster that support VPN access, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely, Maurice. Well, first off, it's great to be here. But yeah, around the VPN concentrator piece. So although we do have some IPsec VPN capabilities on LoadMaster today, right? We wouldn't really position it as a VPN concentrator, but we do, however, play a major role in some of the VPN solutions that organizations are using, right? Providing some of the high availability, the scalability, and additional security, of course, for solutions such as Microsoft Always On VPN or Direct Access.
Okay, excellent. So we'll probably at this stage move on to just look into some of the other capabilities that are in LoadMaster that it can support a security strategy. And we'll start off by looking at web application firewall. And the if we look at what we're protecting against, I can see here that the figure of 68% there is quite high in terms of applications that have been identified as vulnerable. Uh, is it not a case that this is just sort of homegrown applications or legacy applications, or is this sort of common across all applications, Kurt?
You're talking about really across the board, right? From legacy applications to the more modern applications, and whether they're kind of off the shelf, bought off the shelf, or developed, as you said, in house. But what really I think is really scary about these stats is these threat actors out there. I mean, they're they're really good, right, at what they do, right? So any of these, the gap in security or any vulnerability that can be exploited, it will, right? It will be, and whether they're doing it for money or disruption or even for boredom or fun, right? Um, Organizations really need to be in kind of this better position to protect these assets. And since we're talking about in this section, right, WAF, I guess it should be kind of clear as we start building this out is that it really shouldn't be like the only line of defense, right? We're talking about more of a layered security model, and WAF would just be one component of that.
Okay, and just the OWASP top 10, I've heard that mentioned quite a bit in connection with WAF. What is the OWASP top 10?
Yeah, so the OWASP top 10, it's the Open Web Application Security Project, right? And what this is, it's a collection of the most critical risks as it pertains to web application security, right? So it's the OWASP Foundation. It's a community that produces and maintains this, and obviously widely used across organizations. So developers and security teams have insight, right, to the current security risks and the impact, right, they can bring to the business. So providing a web application firewall, right, as we do, of course, utilizing the OWASP core rule set uh, to ensure customers are protected is what we do.
Yeah, it's probably a good time, maybe just do a quick for people that may not be familiar with the architecture of a web application firewall. If you could just talk through this basic diagram here in terms of what's happening.
Yeah. So here we see in this diagram, there's some application servers sitting behind the load balancer, right, which has the web application firewall component enabled. We often say here that the load balancer is in a privileged position on the network, right? We're sitting between the users or systems accessing the application and the application itself. So, in addition to providing that necessary availability and scalability for the application, we can also provide necessary security, right? The way that we're able to do that, right, and we'll talk a little bit about um, traffic that's encrypted. And again, we'll get into this a little bit later in the webinar. But it's that the clients that are accessing the application are being directed to the load balancer, right? The load balancer accepts the connection and is able to decrypt it. We can look inside the traffic, right? Ensure that the requests don't include any malicious code. And when the WAF determines that the traffic's clean, then and only then will it forward on to those backend systems. So just by enabling the WAF, we can see here that legitimate requests, right, are passed to those backend systems, while those malicious attempts there in the center are being blocked by the WAF rules, right? So,
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
it kind of also, Morris, in addition to this piece here, um, we're also doing logging on the load balancer as well. So, any of these malicious attempts that come across are being logged, and therefore, the security team could be alerted on these kind of attempts and take the necessary action against them.
Right. Okay. And uh, this seems like a bit of a no-brainer that you put a WAF in front of all your applications almost by default, given that there's such a high level of vulnerabilities in well, not all applications, but up to 68% of them. So yeah, it seems a very obvious move to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just looking here at WAF in the context of hybrid and multi-cloud. Uh, I had a quick look at some of the other the cloud providers, and they all have WAF solutions. But one of the challenges, and this again came out in the EMA report, is the fact that if you're in a multi-cloud environment, that you're dealing with different user interfaces, that there's skills, that everybody has to be skilled up on all of them, and the cost management part of it there is significant as well. That some of the cost, as you add more rules, your costs go up. So yeah, there's a number of challenges there that are highlighted in the report around the 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 challenges of using across individual WAF solutions across multiple clouds. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, and also being able to consistently apply your policies is also a challenge there. Okay, I think we've sort of given the 101 on WAF there now, and just have a look here at managing TLS and SSL security. In my sort of research and observation, the biggest issue seems to be certificate expiry. Somebody forgets to renew a certificate that's expired. It may be that that they're off on vacation that week or whatever it may be, and the numbers are staggering. Actually, 88% of organizations having an outage due to that. And it seems that some of the drivers in this here are that the certificate lifetimes are getting shorter, and people are using services like Let's Encrypt, where a certificate is only valid for 90 days, so that to be renewed. And I came across the ACME protocol, ACME, on this here. And again, Kurt, could you just give us a little bit of an insight into the ACME protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. And Marcy, yeah, that 88% though, that I'll tell you that, and also you think about, well, there maybe the smaller companies. I mean, there's some really big players that have fallen into that
Yeah,
percentage
yeah,
there and had
absolutely.
problems. Real big players. Yeah, so ACME, as it's spelled out here, right? Automated certificate management environment. And what this is, it's a communication via the API between, in our case, the load balancer, right, and select certificate authorities to automate the creation and the renewal of certificates. So these updated certificates could then be automatically applied to the load balancer configuration for those published applications that we're sitting in front of, right, to prevent any outage due to expired certs, right? This is all happening automatically in the background, and administrators don't need to be going out and providing the CSRs and all that stuff. It's all done behind the scenes there from the load balancer. Many customers, right, have been moving to this centralized management of certificates on the load balancer, or in some cases they have multiple load balancers to really simplify the environment and reduce the overall risk.
Yeah, and this is supported natively in LoadMaster, so it's not that anything is set and forget, but it is a set and forget. I noticed that in while some of the cloud providers have notification mechanisms in there, etc., you're still open to the problem of somebody being on vacation or not
Yeah,
taking an action on the email, and some of it as well. I believe Azure, the standard supported way there is there's PowerShell scripts too. So this
yep,
avoids having to do all that scripting. So you just do it on the LoadMaster, and yeah, excellent. The other bit then is when we're looking at SSL and TLS security is how the a load a LoadMaster can actually help with your compliance. And maybe you could explain a bit just what's going on in this and other rudimentary network diagram.
yeah. I mean, similar to what I pointed out before regarding WAF, right? Being in this privileged position, right? We have and being that layer 7 ADC, right? We have the ability to enforce the maximum level of encryption. So where you may have systems behind the load balancer and say they don't support, TLS 1.3, right? In this example, we have SSL 3.0, or perhaps they don't provide any encryption at all on the backend system, right? The load balancer can force clients that are connecting, whether it be over the internet or even within the corporate network, to use TLS 1.3, but then downgrade to a lesser encryption method, or even completely offload encryption altogether to those backend hosts there.
Okay, and see here, just yeah, this seems to be something that helps with the compliance. If you're, there's external regulators here, but a lot of this here is best practice as well. I presume we can see here that's a very shortened list of cipher suites there, but presumably with LoadMaster you can enforce a set of cipher suites to comply with these standards.
Yeah. I mean, you're pointing out, the PCI DSS compliance, right? And there's definitely specific cipher sets that are required, and others that should be, kind of disabled to meet those requirements, right? So having an easy way to manage those cipher sets across all your load balancers is key. Right? We're talking before about, having these different, load balancers across different clouds and things, but as you said before, even scripting things across all your load balancers is going to be key to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. Also, we point out here FIPS. Now, I don't know if anyone on the call is supporting government agencies, but FIPS, which is the Federal Information Processing Standard, is yet another requirement that can be enabled to set the necessary, encryption algorithms and things that are imposed by those agencies.
Excellent. Okay, so again, LoadMaster there is where you can set a policy and enforce that policy. So even if somebody does something on the back end host that enables something, it isn't going to expose that there to the wider world on the internet. Okay, right. Excellent. We'll take a look now at the whole identity management capabilities and very much around authentication, single sign-on. And again, we see that all the cloud providers have some sort of an identity and access management capability there. So just some of the challenges there, Kurt, around in a multi-cloud environment that we see.
Yeah, I mean, authentication and single sign-on is yet just another necessary layer, right, in that security model. And as you said, each of these clouds have their own identity and access management, or IAM, offering. I read something came out a couple of years ago that from IBM that 85% of organizations currently operate in multi-cloud. and that was going up into the high 90s for the percentage that are expecting to operate, right? And with that, right, comes some real challenges, as you said, because there's really no easy solution on, synchronizing the identities across these clouds. We point out here the different security models, the different management interfaces, multiple management points, and so on. Really, kind of the best approach here would be to align your identity provider, right, with your cloud strategy, right, and this could be one of the three clouds listed here, or even using a third party, right.
All
And
right.
if you kind of were to choose one of these cloud providers, and with the number of organizations that have moved to Office 365, right, Microsoft Azure might be the obvious choice, right, since there are dependencies with email and Teams and OneDrive and SharePoint and so on, right, that companies are utilizing that rely on that identity provider.
Okay, and so the LoadMaster here essentially can tuck into any of these systems and then just sit in front of your web properties on these clouds, and everybody uses the same identity across all of the clouds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
simplifies it.
as
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, as that example I just pointed out there
Yeah.
with Microsoft Azure, right? The LoadMaster, we're actually listed in the Azure AD App Gallery for single sign-on. So for
Right.
those that the Azure AD App Gallery it's loaded with all SaaS solutions that support single sign-on natively. But you have those applications that you're running that don't fall into that, right? So, by able to use SAML authentication, you can have your load masters deployed in all the clouds, any of the clouds, or even on premises, for publishing those applications, and leveraging Azure AD as an example, um, as the identity provider, right? And for those who'd rather use a third party identity provider, the same approach could be taken, where you kind of drop the load masters in front of the applications and immediately leverage the pre-authentication and single sign-on capabilities.
Right. I noticed that API gateway just popped onto the slide there. So, what's the significance of the API gateway there in the multi-cloud? And
I mean, we're seeing more and more customers that are leveraging this concept of the API gateway, and needing to provide the availability and security for those systems that are using, um, communicating via the API is going to be key, because again, there's a lot of security risks and things like that by using the API. So putting that through the load balancer, enabled to do this type of authentication, is going to be another layer of security in your security practice there.
and
And
the load
uh,
master is actually acting as the API gateway in that.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So it's consolidating all the different application APIs and just presenting it out as one.
yep, yep.
Okay.
And again, it really doesn't matter whether kind of the applications that are being published through the load balancer support authentication, right? If they do support authentication, that's great, right? We can leverage protocols, as we see here, Kerberos, for instance, to tightly integrate the authentication with the backend systems. But if you have applications that say don't support any kind of authentication method, that's still okay, right? The load balancer can still require that pre-authentication prior to sending that traffic to the backend systems, right?
Okay.
And this kind of restrictive access to the application is going to really greatly improve the security posture, right?
All right.
And that's really kind of what we need to do, right? Constantly looking at ways to
All right.
improve the security posture, whether it's running single cloud or multi-cloud and hybrid
Okay.
cloud, so.
Excellent. Okay. Right. So, yeah, but just I think we've covered the technical issues. And just to drop in a bit more to the research paper that we had, just the multi-cloud challenge. And, if we refer back to the report, we got some insight into some of the, let's say, the technical challenges. And, the interesting things to point out are those integration. You can see there integration with other technologies is as on top of the list there. And we can see that, while something like a cloud native load balancer would offer good enough capabilities for relatively simple same cloud scenarios, the maturity of a product such as LoadMaster becomes apparent. The heritage of over 20 years of enabling application availability and security. We've developed deep capabilities that support more advanced load balancing scenarios natively. So, for example, something like URL rewriting is a common requirement that we've seen over the years. And again, if you're an AWS, you'd have to go to their CloudFront service, their CDN service, at an additional cost to get those sort of capabilities. So, things like content switching, these advanced features are natively in the load balancer that can be used to, give additional layers of security in there. And, there's no additional licensing or subscriptions or required at all. And that depth also applies into how we integrate into other systems, it's a multi-cloud, multi-application, multi-architecture load balancer. We've got deep integrations there with third parties for authentication, and even doing things like application health checks, checking to see if your application is healthy. We've got very, very deep integrations there. You can write your own custom ones. You can do, binary level checks and health checks. They're quite deep integration. So again, we've encountered a lot of those challenges there around that, integration, the programmability, etc. There is, again, we have an extensive API, and it's we can see that there the poor API part there is tied into that as well. We can see as a challenge. LoadMaster, every capability feature on LoadMaster is available via APIs. You can manage the complete environment via API, and because if you use LoadMaster across multiple clouds, you've got consistency there. You don't have to have multiple, you're not dealing with multiple different security architectures in each of the cloud. And it allows you to rapidly and consistently apply a security policy that supports your strategy across all of these clouds. So, and one of the recommendations on the in this report is, don't be relying on the cloud provider load balancing solution. Again, to highlight the challenges here, that skills gap part, you have to learn multiple environments. You have to be familiar with multiple security architectures as well. And you can also see there that, cost is a big issue. Again, on the surface, going onto the cloud, getting a load balancer set up, the cost of it is actually quite low, okay? But the devil, again, is often in the detail, so you've got charges, let's say for if you are adding it, WAF rules, you pay for, the WAF rules that you're adding, so you're adding cost there. And again, performance comes in there as well, that, in terms of cost, if you outgrow your instance, you need to buy a secondary instance to give you capacity and so on. So those raise questions around the cloud provider load balancing solutions in, especially in that multi-cloud environment. And it's where LoadMaster provides you with that very, very simple, consistent way of delivering your services. So that brings us to the end. I think we have finished more or less on time there after 30 minutes. And we just now are open to questions, and just having a quick look in the questions box. And I'm not sure Right. We have one here. Probably you'll be able to address this, Kurt. I think you might have touched on it earlier. Do you integrate with SIEM systems for security logging?
Yeah. So SIM, the security information and event management systems. Yeah. So we absolutely can. Yeah. I mentioned before we were talking about WAF or our ability to do logging and things like that. So there's some, and as we're talking about cloud, we have integration across many SIMs, but Microsoft Sentinel as one. We actually have some uh, documentation, some videos, and things like that on integrating with Microsoft, since it's fairly popular SIM. But yeah, again, that's actually being leveraged. Where you can kind of consolidate that across all clouds, centralize that information that can be used with by the security team. So yeah, yep, there's definitely
Yeah,
some integration with that.
so that would be basically from your AWS security logging could be presented in your Azure monitoring environment.
It's
Okay.
a lot of interesting things.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting one of the points that is in that report as well is about getting your DevOps teams and your security teams on the same page, so that they're not using different tools across. So being able to integrate the tooling across the clouds is important there as well.
Yep.
Um, right, there's another question here. Can LoadMaster offer DDoS protection?
Uh, Actually, so when you're talking about cloud, right? So there's actually some basic DDoS protection on the network level, right? By these cloud providers that they provide by default for no cost. There's some enhanced as well, but from the load balancer, from the load master perspective, we can certainly enhance the security around DDoS using features such as CAPTCHA to make sure it's not a bot. So we're making sure that there's an actual human behind the keyboard, or doing things like QoS rate limiting, which will provide, kind of restrict a system from overloading the application by sending, too many requests. So having this concept of, fair and balanced access to the resources on the back end, or some features that we could add to a DDoS protection.
I vaguely remember in the LoadMaster UI that there was a capability as well of blocking a complete country of traffic, or being able to do IP blocking.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly the
Yeah,
concept of
yeah,
access control lists,
yeah,
to allow or restrict access from different
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
IP ranges and such. Yeah, so you can also do that.
Right. I've got a question here. Is there a recommendation for the LoadMaster to be on-prem and provide services to cloud-hosted resources? So, what's the recommendation? Do we put the load balancer on-prem and load balance the cloud, or do we put it in the cloud?
I mean, I would certainly recommend having the load balancer as close to the backend systems. But as I was mentioning before, when we were talking about IPsec, I mean, that certainly is a use case where someone could even use some of our IPsec VPN capabilities to extend to the cloud. But I think for the most part, yeah, having the load balancer close to the systems that they're sitting in front of would probably be best. If there's any kind of outages, circuits
Right.
being down or
Okay.
interruption there,
Yeah.
certainly want to, just from an uptime, right, availability perspective, having those components closer together would be recommended
Yeah.
in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Presumably, if you had a global server load balancing there, you could actually have a mixture of on-premise and cloud load
Oh
balancers
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't even touch on global
Yeah.
balancing
Yeah.
across,
Yeah. Yeah.
which, yeah, that certainly can come into play. But
Yeah.
that could be another webinar to talk about that.
And we've got a question here: is LoadMaster validated for FIPS common criteria or others? I think yes, we are FIPS certified, and we'll be when SSL 3.0 or TLS 3.0, OpenSSL 3.0 as well comes in, will be FIPS certified with that as well. And common criteria, we will have some news on that there very, very, very shortly. So the answer to that is yes. We have another question here. Which models include WAF ability? Okay. WAF, all LoadMaster models are WAF capable. Okay. So on your hardware, in the cloud, on the virtual, if you're running it on your on-premise hypervisor, WAF can be enabled on all of those. Again, WAF can be a bit resource intensive, so it's always good to engage with some of our pre-sales engineers to make sure that, especially on the hardware side, to make sure that things get sized correctly for WAF. But WAF is there, available on all models. I'm just checking any more questions here. Oh, right. Can these security layers be applied to Kubernetes-based applications?
Actually, yes, it absolutely can. So we do have Kubernetes capabilities, ingress capabilities with Kubernetes on the LoadMaster. So this is something that could be enabled, and the idea is that you're really using or can use all of the capabilities on LoadMaster that we've discussed today, and everything else that's included on LoadMaster. And yeah, definitely recommend folks kind of look at Kemp's site to see our capabilities around Kubernetes. We're doing a lot of interesting things there.
All right. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Okay, so with no more questions, Kurt, thanks very much for your help today. And also thanks to everybody for attending. As I mentioned, you'll be getting a follow-up email with a link to that EMA report. I think you'll find some interesting reading in there. And to find out more about LoadMaster, or to see in general how Progress can help your security strategy, please visit progress.com. And thank you all, and have a great day.